What is best for the project is not always what's best for you. That's the point I want to make today, and it's something you can take with you in your choices of how you navigate your own path. The way this conversation came up, even though, of course, I mostly talk about game development, I also overlap into the educator circles. And I saw some researchers talking about how, well, can they use technology like ChatGPT as a form of research assistant, right? So that it is potentially even faster, maybe even better in some cases, than the kind of answer you might get back from a research assistant. And well, they say part of why it's important to keep it a research assistant, right, is because you still need the lead researcher, the professor, or somebody like that who can spot the issues, identify. That area seems a little flimsy. We should double check that because it will make mistakes, it will hallucinate, but obviously people make mistakes too. But the difference and why this ties into my point today about what's good for the project isn't always what's best for you, right? How do people wind up on the other side of that experience level as a professor, as a lead researcher? It's by years of being a research assistant. And so one of the challenges that we're seeing out of the genAI effect on the landscape is that if something used to be the kind of thing that you became a senior programmer by doing junior level programming work, and if what genAI is enabling the workplace as a system to do is that they don't need the junior programmer because the senior engineer can have genAI doing stuff that used to be like what the junior engineers did. Again, you can see what I'm talking about. We have a pipeline problem in terms of people retire, people age, people decide to shift into management. We do not have forever the people who really have a best handle on these things. And the way we get to know them better is because when GPT or something makes a mistake, when it hallucinates, there's a difference between that and when people make a mistake, right? When GPT makes a mistake, or similar technology, cloud, whatever you like, if those make an error, well, you go and you correct the work that you're doing, but it doesn't actually improve the system in the same kind of way when you're working with a person, right? Part of why, think about this, part of why graduate school is school, even though they're doing research work, and not a research business, right? Like an R&D lab is fundamentally about this. It's the fact that your collaborator on research paper, it's about the person who is your research assistant. Your teaching assistant may not always know right. They may not always do it best. But it's the opportunity to make that mistake to then be corrected from it, in which the research paper, the classroom in some ways is partly an artifact of an opportunity to practice learning from those kinds of mistakes. This is why, and to pull it back to game development, right? This is why the difference between sometimes people get this weird broken mental models. It's super to understand how learning works, and they don't understand like why Home Team doesn't operate like a game studio. And one of the most obvious reasons is because if you're in a game company, you have to only do what you're very good at, right? If you have an engineering background, you're the engineer. If you have a sound effects background, you're the sound effects person. There's none of this, oh, I've just thought it'd be fun to make a song today, or I've been interested in level design, maybe I could try that out. That will ruin a commercial project, right? It's not going to be as good as if you only bring in someone who has proven their chops at it. And so this is where we get the classic catch-22 problem. Well, how do you prove your chops if they don't want you to do it until you've done it? And the answer is, obviously my version is Home Team Game Dev for people who university is not the answer for, but a lot of people, it's been university game programs or that kind of shape of thing, or game jams, or working with a few friends they find at school or whatever, where it's a chance that we may not actually be the best people for this current project. And we may be making choices that are not best for the current project. We're making choices based on what's best for us in the long term. Our growth, our ability to go from research assistant to lead researcher. Our ability to go from, I was just trying out a thing and then I realized I have a knack for it and now I'm an animator, right? Finding my way into a channel because I'm able to try being a project lead. Do I actually like that? Do I dislike that? Those are the kind of things we do in learning contexts that are vastly different from a commercial studio. This is also why it's become such an important framing. I literally started this about a year ago within Home Team, but we have a version of this at whygamedev.com if you're curious to kind of explore. I think it's 8 questions that help kind of sort what's your current focus, because it varies by person, it varies by project, sometimes it even varies by task. I've been able to help people get to their goals much more efficiently if we figure out, okay, are you really trying to get a job doing this? And if so, we're going to pick tasks that are very specialized that help set up a strong portfolio for you're going to be able to do that. You may be weaker in other areas because you're being the strongest at a certain thing. If your actual goal is there's a game you want to make, and whether or not it has commercial potential is a secondary question. There's a game that you want to see real. Well, then we design your path, your experience, your tasks around what's going to mean that by the time you're working on the game that's more important to you, whether within something like Home Team or independently, whenever you're doing that, how to make sure it's your second, your third time taking on some of those kind of challenges so that you have that to draw upon from your experience. And along the way, well, what were the games that got made? I don't want to be blunt, too blunt. Basically, it doesn't matter, right? The point was you got a real applied context to get your hands in it, to try it out, to try out a way And whether you asked for my feedback as someone who's now helped advise hundreds and hundreds of people through the pipeline of finding their footing to what they want to do with making their own games, or whether you just try it out in a space where you can safely mess up and your teammates aren't mad at you and customers aren't mad at you and executives aren't firing you and companies aren't shutting down branches because it was there for learning purposes, you can safely experiment. You can try other things out. And it's a very different lens. Again, if it's preparing you for a thing you want to do. The third category, you'll see it of our kind of framing of systems of why people do things. And it's where it's part of what I've enjoyed about what I do so much, because I'm at a much different price point than university structure. There's always been this part of the creative sphere. I call it kind of the Bob Ross energy of when Bob Ross is teaching people to paint, right? He's not talking about how to get a job painting. He's not trying to help you make your ultimate painting you've always had in mind. He's kind of just chilling out, making painting. And there's not a stress over doing it better or worse. And this is, again, a thing I've enjoyed, being able to work with some people who, to them, it's just satisfying to make things, right? It's creatively enriching. It's fulfilling. It helps feel us, round us out. Like putting things together with Legos or doing a jigsaw puzzle or just drawing a picture without stressing about it. And realizing there's people who are creating games together who they're doing pixel art because it's fun to do pixel art. They're not actually trying to get better. They don't want feedback on it. They're not studying at it, right? They make sound effects because it's kind of fun to do. They're not stressed about, am I going to get paid to do sound effects? Is my job to it? There's different reasons or ways we do things, all of which are valid, right? None of these are right or wrong. It comes down to what fits in your life, what matches your interests. And that's where we strategically try to be clever about, okay, well, is there a kind of project we can get you involved in? But this goes back to this point of the reason we're doing these things, right? And it's like even before genAI, right? There was basically just infinite bins on the internet of stuff, of pre-made art, pre-made assets. I'm not judging anybody who made any of that stuff. All that is, again, valid and okay. But it was a missing opportunity to engage with, to work with somebody else, to have to learn to navigate our compromises. And it's, again, one of these kind of dangers to the pipeline of our own development, our enrichment, our filling out ourselves as being more whole. And that when we lean on technology to be that answer, to avoid working with another person, right? It's one of these challenges with genAI stuff, for example, is that, okay, well, if a human being asks another human being to do something, let's say I'm a lead researcher. Okay, I didn't finish my PhD, but I taught at university a few years, so let's pretend I'm a lead researcher on something. I send a research assistant to do something. They have a whole different set in their mind of perspectives, lenses, areas of their research specialization. Even if I'm further in some track, they know different things than I do. They might put on my radar something else that would not have occurred to me to ask them to do. And in the same, when we collaborate with other people instead of leaning on technology to try to fill in gaps for us, they come back not just with the answer we asked them for, but sometimes interesting insights, right, that are unique to each person from their experiences, from their project history, from the games that they like, from the things that they want out of life. Sometimes they're not from games at all. Films that have never been done in English, books they've read that aren't in English, things that we get from cross-cultural, worldwide influences that are not going to come back from, okay, what was best for this project, as I saw it, was just filling in this hole. Right, back to this first point. What's best for the project is always what's best for the person. You know, even with companies, right, with businesses, and so many companies have abused, misused this term, this role. I'm not in defense of any of that. I'm trying to explain what it was supposed to have been to help you understand this distinction. Internships, when they're done correctly, as they were supposed to have happened, and I'm not totally sure I've ever seen it actually happen this way in reality. So again, gap between the ideal intention and what we wind up seeing. It's supposed to, frankly, slow the company down, right? That is part of why it is either so low paid, or in some circumstances, again, not endorsing this, they wind up being justified as unpaid, is because it's meant to be the company is taking time to help someone who's going to make a lot of mistakes because they do not know what they're doing yet, because they do not have a background in it, because they're learning on the job. And the hope there as a trade is that in exchange for helping this person with what's good for their long-term development, even if it's not what's best in the near term for the business, well, they're going to get to know the people there. They'll get to trust those people. They might want to start their career there too and spend the next few years there becoming an actual employee, getting more involved. Again, in practice, internships wind up abused, unfortunately, as displacing people who should be paid real salaries. I hate all that system the way that it's currently shaped. It winds up being, anyway, that's a whole other rant for a whole other day. But again, when it's done correctly, the way it was supposed to have worked, and again, to make this distinction, it's not what's best for the project. It's not what's best for the company. What's best for the person is often at odds with that. And there's a gradient. And you'll often hear from very, very, and I don't judge them. I know we only know what we know, and it's hard to tell till we have enough experience. Very beginner people will sometimes say, well, I know all of the things, right? I want what's good for the game, and I want what's good for me. And I'm going to learn. I'm just going to do whatever interests me. I'm going to learn, and then maybe I'll sell it, and maybe I'll do super well. And it's incredibly naive. That's not the shape of the universe. It winds up being a spork, right? Those spoon/fork hybrids, which doesn't serve either purpose very effectively. it becomes a matter of you can sampler platter a bit, but the reason the sampler platter is to figure out where you're doubling down, figure out what you're really in it for. And if your goal is to take it further, then in what direction? Because this is how we wind up people. I've seen people, it's part of why I set up these tracks in my current training system. People would spend years doing good work, great stuff, producing results. That's the wrong shape to set them up for where they want to go in terms of their positioning, in terms of their experience, right? In terms of their portfolio stuff. It's why when we're beginners, we work together. So, and this is, I think I might use an example in my audiobooks, but ex of mine was a dental hygienist. And we lived in a state where the dental hygienists gave a numbing shot. So, okay, needles gross you out. Sorry, I'm going to skip the next 20 seconds. Basically, when they're in dental hygiene school and have to practice giving the numbing shots, they practice giving them to each other, knowing full well they're not very good at it yet. And they might hurt each other a little bit. They're going to get feedback to each other. It's not really that pleasant. But the point is, they need to be on the other side of that. So they're making those mistakes together. So by the time they have a paying customer, a client in the chair for the dentist that they're working in the office of, they are going to be a few more steps ahead, right? And again, this is the same thing we see part of why I don't emphasize more trying to like sell you on the games we're making, out of which, to be clear, we have a huge range, right? We have some very, very beginner stuff. We have some very impressive stuff out of Home Team. But why I'm not usually emphasizing the games is that I don't want that pressure on it, because a lot of the teams, it's people all learning together in some ways, again, like those dental hygienists giving each other shots, making our mistakes together to grow through. And it's not about could a machine get us a better answer faster. And that's even, again, an ideal hypothetical. I know oftentimes it's confused, it's wrong, it gives us hallucinations, it summarizes the wrong stuff. There's things it's good at. There's some ways programmers are using it cleverly. There's also a lot of mess and downside. But I'm saying even in the ideal, right? Even in like a science fiction, if we imagine a version that could just give us the perfect answer fast. You can see what I mean about the problem being, well, that's how we got the people who were experienced enough to be the lead researcher, to be the senior engineer. And who replaces those people when they retire? Who still knows how to do stuff? If the pipeline was removed. Because, well, instead of the, underpaid intern who we're misusing the word intern for, instead of taking the time to slow down and train them, we'll just have genAI do what we used to have an intern do. And suddenly you can see the problem again of it is huge threat to our pipeline. It stresses me out a lot as an educator. It's one of my main concerns. There's the immediate concern. There's the ethics of scraping, data, training, all kinds of stuff. There's the energy concerns. It's again, all this is on my mind. But really, to me as an educator, first and foremost, my question is its effect on our pipeline and our ability to work with each other, our ability to learn at a deeper sense. The more we lean on it, the more we'll end up not internalizing inside of ourselves. Anyway, I could talk plenty about this. If this interests you, if you're into these kind of discussions, I grapple with this reality a lot day to day and helping people navigate implications of their longer term careers on these topics, on keeping up with it. I'm happy to chat more about it. Anyway, let me know in the comments if it interests you. If it's not, again, you know how I am, kind of bouncing around topics a little bit. Anyway, it is 2025. Hope things are going as smoothly as they can. I know there's obviously a lot of tumult and things. All we can do right is the things under control and stuff. Anyway, it's a whole other chat for a whole day. It was basically I had a second catch myself before I said happy 2025. It is 2025 is where I'm at right there on that. Catch you all another time. Good seeing you all again here on a video. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you all next time. Bye for now.